years. Dr. Greer has risked his life by exposing this. And they have built a fleet of airships capable of going around the world and attacking cities just as if they were coming from outside the earth, with the end of taking over the world. That is the aim of the game. And somehow, first of all, we have got to understand what is going on. And then we have got to persuade the American people, and especially the American Congress, that they have to do something about it. Because they're the one that's putting up the money to keep this threat alive and to risk the fate of all of the earth.
Now, you've mentioned before there's numerous alien species. We always hear about not only human abductions, but these cattle mutilations where it appears there's been highly advanced operations performed on these cattle. Is there any particular species that might be responsible for these abductions?
I wouldn't say so. The Americans signed agreements, I think, with a couple of species that they could do a certain amount of that in order to, in exchange for technology. But then there was no control. That the visitors were supposed to give them lists of the people who had been abducted, and so of course that was never done, or certainly not lists that were accurate. And I think I don't want to pinpoint anyone, but I do want to mention that the mutilations and the abductions didn't end with the visitors. They were taken over by the United States forces. And they have created clones of beings that look like extraterrestrials. And they have abducted people who have been confronted by these clones and given the impression that they had been abducted by extraterrestrials, when in fact they were being abducted by the American Space Command. And so it's getting very complicated, because when you have so many species from different parts of the cosmos coming, and with different plans and different points of view. And some of them, you asked a question earlier about would they intervene. They only know, but they have one or two occasions. They have cut the atomic warheads from one or two missiles that have been launched. So the answer is they could and might intervene. We just don't know. But we shouldn't rely on them for protection. We should try and clean up our own act. Because to say that the extraterrestrials have been the threat so far is not true, because they could have taken us over anytime they wanted to. No problem. Still could.
And that's because they're so much further advanced from us. We don't even really know where they're from exactly, but they have the ability to come here. So there's nothing realistically we could do to defend ourselves should they want.
That's absolutely true. They're so far advanced that they could, even when our people now are so far advanced, relatively speaking, after 50 or 60 years, that they can shoot them down, some of them. They still couldn't fight a war against most of the extraterrestrial species, which are still far, far more sophisticated than we are. They're way ahead of us still. And to take them on for size would be absolute total folly, because we've got some people who think they're so smart they can do anything, and they can't. and they shouldn't try, and they have to come sometime soon to the realization that man wasn't put on the earth just to have the fun of killing his fellow human beings. That this isn't what we're all about. That we were created to work together, to be cooperative, to be caring, to love each other, to feed each other when someone's hungry. And there are millions of people in Africa this year who risked starving to death when we sat idly by and did very little. Some of us did a little bit, but very little. And lots of them who need roofs over their heads and medical attention and so on. These are the things that we should have been doing for the benefit of our species, which is an experiment, instead of saying, well, we're going to have the next and biggest empire in the history of the world. It's going to be greater than the Roman Empire. And we're going to run the show exclusively. And if it means wiping out a large proportion of the people on Earth, well, so be it. Too many people already. Well, there are only too many people already is because we don't share the food, we don't share the medical attention, and we didn't take advantage of an offer which was made to General Eisenhower to give us that kind of peace and opportunity. So we've made wrong choices all the way along the line. And we've been going our merry way as if power and greed were the predominant characteristics of our species, instead of love and caring, compassion, and mutual cooperation, which is what the Creator intended. So, which way are we going to go? And that's kind of where we're sitting at the moment, because are we going to do what we have to do to avoid this catastrophe that a handful of very sick people are planning to do to us? There are people in the Pentagon that actually think they can have a nuclear war with Russia and live to tell the tale. Well, they're psychopathic. It's impossible. It will not happen because there are so many checks and balances. But even though they don't believe that there's mutual assured destruction, which has been the plan for 50 years or so, since the atomic weapons became widespread, it's more than enough of them around in submarines and elsewhere that it would be. And millions of the U.S. population would be wiped out if they were ever silly enough, the people of the Pentagon, who have been running the show for so long, to start an atomic war with Russia. And let heaven forbid that they are allowed to do that. But first of all, we have to be aware of what they're planning.
And it's been reported in a couple interviews that you've mentioned there's a federation of alien species. Do all of the alien species kind of work together, or is there warring species that war with each other?
Well, I only know about the Galactic Federation, and I don't know much about it, so I shouldn't talk about it. But they are concerned about what's going on in the world, and they have been working through individuals. They'll pick out a few individuals and visit them or talk to them telepathically or send information to them by channeling. I have a very close friend who was writing a second book right now with channeling from a species called the Pleiadians. Very few people have heard of it. They have a deal that they won't interfere. But I think that there's also a loophole if things get bad enough that they would make exceptions. But we can't count on them. I mean, maybe we can count on them, but we shouldn't count on them because they say, you clean up your act. You're in charge, it's your planet, and if it comes to a dead end, it will be because you let it or made it a dead end. Because it wasn't necessary and you had everything going. It's one of the best planets in the whole universe. And everybody covets the fact that it's so good, and you have been destroying it. And this is something that we've tried to let you know by various ways over a long period. The individual communications always say, look, there are things you've got to do. Stop your clear cutting, stop your fracking, stop using fossil fuels, because there are better ways. And I personally keep pushing and pushing for clean, zero-point energy machines. And in my latest book, Money Mafia, I insist that we should really try to install zero-point energy engines in every car, truck, and tractor, and motorboat, and airplane, and home in the world in 7 years, if we want to save the planet, if we're serious. And we could do it. People say, don't be silly. Well, I know that we could do it because in World War II, we had to convert every automobile plant, every refrigerator plant, and every washing machine plant into armaments plants to win the war. The war we're faced with now to save our home requires us to do just the opposite, to take every armaments plant and convert it into a plant to build zero-point energy engines for cars and trucks and homes and airplanes and so on. And if we did that on a cooperative basis, with all of the big powers behind it, and all of the rest of us coming along, either for the ride or taking our own initiative, we could do it. It's still possible to stop a very large part of the damage. Some of it's already irreversible in the short period. But we could still save our home, put the fire out, and have a nice, happy environment for millions and millions of people who live for a long time to come. Will we do it? Well, I don't know. Ask your politician, your MP, your congressman, your whoever represents you, what they're doing to have that come to pass, and see what their answers are. And then tell them what you think, if they're not up to speed on it.
And there was a big CBC article, and it was on the news across Canada in March of 2013, where the government of Canada came out and said they realized that there is an increasing number of UFO sightings, but the government of Canada is no longer going to be doing any of their own investigations, and instead they're going to be relying on private citizens to investigate these UFOs. Do you think that's a truthful statement, that the government of Canada wouldn't really be too concerned about unidentified flying objects flying over their skies?
I don't think so. Excuse me. I think it's typical of the North American influence that our government is just trying to put the people off, saying we're not interested, because certainly NORAD would be still involved in the business, and we're still a member of NORAD. So those sightings would all go into the machine, as they have been for the last 60 or 70 years.
There's a YouTube video about you I'm not sure if you know who Joe Rogan is. He's a UFC commentator. He has an extremely popular podcast. He's on numerous television shows in the United States. And basically, he covers the subject of UFOs sometimes on his podcast. And there's a video online that has, I guess, over 40,000 hits at this point, where he basically states that you're gullible if you believe the UFO stuff, and that because there's lots of videos of you talking on the subject on UFOs on the internet, you must be making money off of speaking on this subject, and perhaps you're only in it for the financial rewards of speaking on the subject. So because that video, it's one of the things that pops up when you search your name now, I was just wondering if you had any response. Of course, you answered some of these questions in our interview already, but any direct response from somebody that's kind of dismissed you so thoroughly without really knowing too much about you, seemingly?
Well, I think he is obviously part of the disinformation clan. Whether he's being paid to do that sort of thing or not, only he would know. I'm not surprised. I haven't seen it. I'm not even the least bit interested in looking at it because I've got better things to do with my time. But I've been telling the truth for the last 12 years. And that's the reason that there are some people who don't want the truth to be told, who have to say that I don't know what the score is. Well, they're absolutely wrong. I have probably made the odd mistake. We're all human. And I might have said one or two things that were misstatements inadvertently. But basically, everything in my book is true. In my books, both the first one on the subject and the broad subjects, the light at the end of the tunnel, the survival plan for the human species, and the latest one, the money mafia, a world in crisis, they are legitimate efforts to let the people know what is going on and to sidetrack all of the liars and all of the government employees and all of the journalists who are being paid by government agencies who are out there to misinform rather than to level with the people the way they should be if they were responsible citizens. So forget him. He is, in his own way, like NASA, trying to misinform rather than to inform. And you can get the straight goods from my books. And when I make a YouTube, if there's a fluff in it, forgive me, but it will be as legitimate and as honest and as straightforward as I can possibly make it. And do I make a lot of money out of it? No. I haven't, to the best of my knowledge, ever broken even on a book. And I've written 14. If I have, it would, peanuts. And most of them have cost me money, some of them thousands of dollars to get out there. But I have a responsibility as a citizen of my country and of the world to try and alert people to how they're being misinformed by people like that and by agencies like NASA and the United States shadow government and the United States government in a way that is not only detrimental to their understanding and their perhaps actions, but could be fatal if they don't get the truth from someone.
And you're also in your 90s, you're financially secure, and you're putting your reputation on the line by speaking on these subjects. So obviously, it's something you truly believe in.
Absolutely. I mean, why? I've just celebrated my 94th birthday. And I have plenty to eat. I've helped quite a few people who don't, and will continue to do so while I have the resources. I am not financially dependent on book selling. I've seldom get more than a very small honorarium if I speak anywhere. I think maybe one exception, speaking to a financial group, which was, a good investment of my time. But my problem, I don't even normally, and I have difficulty with this, take in enough money to pay the expenses of my office. And I've had to put my own money in order to keep up my campaign of trying to let the people really know what's going on.
And finally, if a species of extraterrestrials were to reveal themselves in a big way to the public, what means do you think they would do to do it in a fashion? Would they do it and try and avoid causing panic, or how do you think they would do it?
Well, this is a hypothetical question. Politicians should learn not to answer hypothetical questions, because the answer is I have no idea, and I'm not worried about them doing it. I am worried about the cabal, the alternate United States government, being the ones that do that for the specific purpose of taking over the world and running it as a dictatorship.
And I don't believe you personally have any social media. I could be wrong on that, but for anyone watching this that might not be familiar with you, where could they find out more about you? I know you have your website.
Well, apart from my website, which is usually out of date because I don't have to worry about it, I'm now doing tweets and blogs, and I hope to do more of those in the year to come, in anticipation of the most important book of my life, which will be Hope Restored, and I'm hoping that we can get it out sometime about a year from now.
And I personally picked up your Light at the End of the Tunnel book from the library, so I know it's available in Ontario libraries, but if someone would like to purchase your books, where could they find it?
Well, they can get them from Amazon, of course, fast delivery. If they want an autographed copy, they can get it from my website, which is paulhellyerweb.com. That's paulhellyerweb.com. And we send them out as quickly as we can, and I'll autograph it for you at the same time. So this is not my business, but I sold quite a few books from the website from people who want to obtain them that way, and you're more than welcome to try that route.
And you've made a few statements to the public watching this video during this interview, but to close off the interview, is there any closing message you would like to tell the viewers?
Yeah, my closing message is we are at a crisis. The crisis is one of right versus wrong. It's one of spirituality. It's the one of whether we're going to follow the dictates of the Creator by living morally and cooperatively, or whether we're going to follow the dictates of the evil one, which is greed and power over other people for personal gain.
Well, thank you very much, sir, for taking the time to speak with us. It's been an honor.
Not at all. It's a pleasure. Thank you.